Happy signing day. Now let's break down Notre Dame's class of 2024, including which player is going to have the best career at Notre Dame and who's going to be able to contribute right away. That's all coming right up.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. Today is Wednesday, December 20th, and thank you for getting your day started right here by making this your first listen of the day. I'm Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018, and now I'm a producer covering college football for Fox Sports. And this episode of Locked On Irish is sponsored by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. The early signing period is officially here, and we have got a great show coming your way. In just a moment, I'm going to be joined by recruiting insider Kevin Sinclair from Irish Illustrated to do a comprehensive breakdown of Notre Dame's 2024 recruiting class. We're going to go over the top players, biggest question marks, which guys can play right away, and a whole lot more. But we are taping this on Tuesday afternoon, the day before signing day, because I have to get on a flight to go visit my parents in Florida for Christmas. But right now, all signs point toward Notre Dame having a pretty anticlimactic signing day, which is honestly what we all need, especially after what we had to deal with last year on signing day with the Peyton Bowen saga and all the drama that came with that. So hopefully we won't have to deal with any of that this year, and no crazy news breaks out between now and the end of the day on Wednesday. If anything crazy does happen, well, I guess you can blame me. So I apologize in advance, but let's bring in Kevin. All right, I'm joined now by a great friend of the program, recruiting insider Kevin Sinclair, to break down Notre Dame's class of 2024. Now that we've officially reached the early signing period, at the time of this recording, Notre Dame has the 9th-ranked class according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. Now, that might change given some late movement on signing day at the top, but this looks like another really impressive haul for Marcus Freeman and his staff. So, Kevin, what do you see as the biggest strength of this group?
Yeah, for me, the way I sort of judge a class is sort of two things, okay? One is just you want those great players who can play early or just have great careers. You want the Jaden Greathouse types and the Jeremiah Loves, guys like that we saw last year, Ben Morrison and Joe Alt like we saw the year before. And the other part is you want to meet your needs, of course, right? If there's a very urgent need in a class for, let's just say it was cornerbacks, and that team signed 0 cornerbacks, but they signed a couple of 5-stars at positions that are already loaded. The outlook there from a lot of fans would be, oh, this is this great class. But in reality, it's not. And that's goes to my point of needs, meeting those needs, addressing those needs, filling out the depth chart. Super, super important. So, of course, impact talent and then meeting those needs, right? And to that point, in this class, going into it, Notre Dame had a handful of needs, and I feel like they addressed almost all of them with really nice classes. And I'll be more specific. They really needed a variety of defensive ends and some quality guys, hopefully some that could potentially play early. That was one of the highest priorities, in my opinion. And they went out and they got, Bryce Young, who I think is one of the best, probably one of the top 10 defensive ends in the whole class. Logan Thomas, who's a legit 4-star guy. And Cole Mullins is, if I were to give just a couple of guys I think are underrated, he might be at the top of the list, So big time there. Notre Dame, of course, we all know the situation at receiver. Excellent receivers class. Didn't land the Dante Moore or, Vizina, any of those types in the previous class. Ended up with a really nice quarterback, but needed that being a big impact quarterback. Got CJ Carr. So my point is the biggest win in this class, in my opinion, was if you look at the handful of those priority needs, those urgent needs, they filled most of them with really good talent, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you mentioned him. We can't talk about this recruiting class without mentioning CJ Carr. He has been the face of this class really since the moment that he committed, and now he's already on campus working with the team as they get ready for the Sun Bowl. And let's be honest here, Notre Dame has been on somewhat of a bad streak over the past decade, really, with their highly ranked quarterback recruits. But Carr feels different. It's not just his ability, but his intangibles. What do you think makes CJ Carr different from some of the other top quarterbacks that Notre Dame has missed on?
Yeah, you look at who he is and where he comes from, right? He is from, I think I wrote about this in my most recent piece, comes from a family tree that's like rooted directly in the game of football, right? With his grandfather and other members of his family, very involved in the game, whether it was playing the game at a high level or coaching. So that matters, right? It's a kid who grew up around, people who are experts and very experienced in the game of football, college football at the high levels. And he's just a natural quarterback. Accuracy is something that quarterback coaches like a Gino Guidugli can workshop with a quarterback to improve. But I think most quarterback coaches will tell you that it's something that can't fully be taught. It's a natural skill. Again, it can be improved incrementally, but it's something that's very much sort of God-given, I think, in a lot of quarterbacks. And CJ Carr absolutely seems to have that. Watched a lot of his games this past season, and he was just carve up defenses. Really, really good leader, very, very poised. And he's also very good at evading pressure, and he's very good at throwing accurately on the run as well. So kind of combine those things. You get this kid from a very prominent football family. He's naturally accurate. He can evade the pass rush, throws really well on the move. And then he's just a great kid and a leader. And man, I'll tell you, he loves Notre Dame, loves it. It wasn't just about a cool coach he liked or, Cam Williams and these guys, receivers in the previous class, no, he loves Notre Dame. And that's a great thing. So you kind of put all that together, and that's why he's different, right? It's also from not too far from home, not a huge adjustment. And, look, he's already on campus. He's at practice today. So he's ready to get after it. And again, it really starts with that accuracy, though.
Yeah, I see that. And I was thinking about being in his shoes right now, joining the team at this point in the season. Like, he's all by himself, basically, because the rest of his teammates aren't even there. And even if he was an early enrollee, he'd have at least a dozen other guys along with him. But I think that just tells you about his commitment. Now, before I get to my next question, I want to let the audience know that you watch as much film of these guys as anyone on the beat, if not more. And I'm not just saying that to gas you up because you're on the show. It's true, and it shows in your breakdown. So as you watch these guys throughout the fall, which players improved their stock the most during their senior season?
Yeah, so it's kind of a two-tiered answer for you. You go into the season and we all have an idea of like who these players are. We've all watched their junior season film, when they committed, before or after they committed. And then their senior season comes along. We all have this picture of, who they are and what they're good at, how good they are, and so forth. And then in my experience watching the season, right away, there's always a couple guys that jump out where it's, whoa, this guy is much more talented or much larger than I thought. Or I thought he was going to play this position. I think he's actually going to fit that one, and so on. And right off the hop, a couple guys who really stood out to me was Micah Gilbert. For starters, Charlotte Christian. They actually played a much, much more challenging schedule than I realized. They played a whole bunch of the very best teams in North Carolina, Providence Day, and just a lot of really high quality teams, Myers Park, just a lot of teams with Division I, Power 5 talent. And then they also played a couple of teams from Georgia that were ranked in the top 100 nationally. And what I noticed, and I watched almost all of their games, no matter which defense they're playing, they could not contain them. They just couldn't. As much as the quarterback could get him the ball accurately, he was catching passes all day long. He had, I believe he averaged around 100 yards receiving per game. He had several games over 100 yards receiving. He's just a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more slippery. I don't know if it's a great comparison, but I do kind of liken him a little bit like a Jaden Thomas, but more agile, a little quicker, a little more agile version of Jaden Thomas. Jaden Thomas, who's a really well-rounded receiver, and kind of I know that inside the program he's known by as a bit of a jack of all trades, and they can move him around. Micah Gilbert's the same thing, and in getting to know him a little bit more, this is a kid who was going to play Division I basketball and took a big turn midway through high school and went after football instead. Special athlete. And then later in the season, another guy who stood out at the beginning of the year was Logan Thomas. Just, initially he was listed like 6'3", 205. Man, I will eat crow if I'm wrong, but I'm almost certain he's at least like 6'4.5". It's going to be over 6'4", I'm sure. A lot of people I've talked to know him or seen him in person say he's more around 6'5". Bigger, more aggressive, tough, gritty, can be mean street guy. Man, he was really, really sharp. And then later in the season, a few other guys who started to pop up kind of later in their senior year. Logan Saldate, man, that kid just more speed, more dynamic. That's a kid who's out in the field working on his routes like obsessively and every day. And you can see it. Really, really good in his routes. I just think he's going to be a really exciting slot receiver for them. I think he might. I don't know if he has the sheer speed of Jordan Faison, but I won't be surprised if he's one of those guys who kind of comes in and can prove that he can maybe play early or play at all at Notre Dame is a big deal. So really a guy who definitely rose there. Anthony Knapp. I don't know if his size is going to keep him confined to the center position, or if, and I've been saying this to a few people, or if he could possibly have a Robert Hainsey-like experience where he's sort of, 6'4", 275 coming out of high school and, eventually gets to that 295, 300 range and can really play. But he is a very, very, very skilled offensive lineman. So we'll see what happens there with the size. He does not have a big frame, to make that clear. But that's they have these big strength and conditioning programs, right? And nutrition programs, and we'll sort of see how that goes. But those are some guys that really stood out to me a lot. And then Bryce Young, it was just a couple years ago when I first met him, and he had played mostly receiver, and he'd only played 1 year of football, and he was kind of clumsy. He kind of didn't really know what was going to happen there. I think he was about 210 pounds, maybe 215. And next thing you know, he is physically, he's not far off what Keon Keeley was when, I don't mean to touch on a sore subject there, but when he was committed to Notre Dame, that big, 6'6", 240, holy smokes. And if he keeps on taking those big steps each year, I'm just saying I won't be surprised if he turns out to be the best player in the class in the long run. We'll see how that goes, though. Man, he's special. So that kind of rounds out the guys who, there's others as well, but those are some off the top of my head that, improve their stock, at least in my eyes, through their senior year.
Yeah, I love Saldate, and I was a little bit surprised when Notre Dame moved so quickly on him after Isaiah Canyon decommitted. They needed a third receiver in the class. They moved on him quickly, and he wasn't ranked that high. And then I started to watch him a little bit more, and I was like, okay, I get it. We'll be right back with Kevin to talk more about Notre Dame's class of 2024. But first, I wanted to tell you about FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel lately, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. All right, for my pick this week, I'm going to be honest, I have not been great with my Thursday night football picks the past couple of weeks, but the best way to get out of a hole is by taking the Rams. -4.5 against the Saints at home on Thursday night football. I think we're just going to have to ride Kyren Williams until the wheels fall off. He has been one of the best running backs in the NFL this season. Hopefully he's able to lead the Rams to a victory by more than 4.5 points, because that's what we're taking this week. Rams -4.5 on Thursday night football. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Who do you think is the best chance of contributing right away once they get on campus?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'd have to say Kingston Viliamu-Aza. When you're a superstar at St. John Bosco, you're as well coached as any prep or high school player in the country, more or less. He started as a freshman, as a linebacker in that program. That's not something that happens very often. He is, you can just see the coaching in him, and then just his natural sort of smarts, and he gets it right. His quickness in reacting to the ball is just second to none. And then I've written about this, is sort of look at him as a triple threat linebacker in that, one, he's as good as it gets in the box, just filling inside run, playing tough, football as a Mike linebacker in the front seven. And then second, he can really get after the quarterback where they'll roll him down to the edge and he'll rush the quarterback. He can dip and rip around big tackles. He's so skilled in getting off blocks and just jamming and extending, and then maneuvering off blocks, putting blockers on their backs at times. He's so strong. He's, 6'3", maybe a little more than 6'3", and 225, 230. And then thirdly, he's the thing that surprised me was how good he is in coverage. Let's say there's a really athletic tight end split out in the slot. He can erase that guy down the seam. He's really good at reading backs out of the backfield and taking away swings and screen passes, pop passes. He's just, we all knew he was an elite linebacker, but what I learned, I think, from watching really closely is that he's elite, but in a very well-rounded sense, and a very sort of mature, sophisticated football sense, if that makes sense.
No, I totally get it. I watched the St. John Bosco Mater Dei game. They played twice this season. It's actually kind of weird because St. John Bosco smoked them the first game, and then they actually lost to Mater Dei in the playoffs. But
yeah,
I tried to watch it and not be biased, but those two teams have so much Division I talent on them. And to me, KVA was the best player on the field. He even played offense. His best play in the playoff game was a touchdown catch that he made with one hand with the defender draped all over him. Like, he is such a good athlete. He has been playing top competition throughout his time in high school. So it makes sense that the transition going from high school to college would be the easiest for him. Okay, before we started doing this, I was looking at your rankings and comparing it to the composite, and a couple names stood out to me. Is there a player or two that you think you're much higher on than some of the recruiting sites that are out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mentioned it earlier. Cole Mullins is a kid that I really like. And I was really unfortunate that he suffered an ankle injury. I talked to him about it. It was kind of similar to the ankle injury you might remember that Tommy Tremble had coming out of high school, but not as severe, where there's a bit of a dislocation there. Had to have a procedure. But I talked to him about maybe 6 weeks ago, and the playoffs were coming up. And he said that, according to his trainers and coaches, he may have even been cleared in the next week or two to play in the playoffs. But he told me even if he was cleared, he was not going to play because he wanted to be 100% when he got to Notre Dame. But, another kid from good stock. His dad was a big 6'4" quarterback at Utah State. He's an excellent baseball player. But in my opinion, he had, coming out of high school, and I watched lots of his game films, whether it's inside linebacker, outside linebacker, weak side, strong side end, weak side defensive end, strong side end, or tight end or H-back. I felt like at every one of those roles, he was had sort of a like high 3-star or low 4-star talent, where I figure once he puts all of his focus on one position, which I think will be the defensive end position, he could really be something. He is very, very, very intelligent kid. He comes from one of the very best programs, most well-coached programs, the very highest division of Georgia high school football. His team was ranked in the top 10 for most of the year, or at least a large portion of the year. He's super, super physically strong, tenacious, athletic, super high motor. But he has this background as a linebacker. So his ability to chase the ball laterally is really good. But again, I talked to his head coach about it. He's really spread thin because he played so many roles. Again, played both defensive ends, played multiple linebacker positions, tight end, H-back. His coach said, man, once he focuses on the defensive end position, he said, we've barely had time to work on pass rushing skills with him. He's 6'4.5", about 240, 245 pounds. There's another guy, I won't be surprised if he plays early. And I just think that he was sort of overlooked. Why? I'm not really too sure. He's in a very, visible program there in Georgia. But I think he's a fantastic player, and he's one of those guys with a really high floor. And he's also a perfect fit for Notre Dame. I think it was going to be sort of Notre Dame or Stanford, one or the other. Really good student. So we'll see how that goes. But I really like Cole Mullins a lot.
Now, who are some guys that might need some time as they develop physically, but you think have a really high ceiling down the road?
Yeah, two come to mind. Already talking about him earlier. Logan Thomas. Once he puts on 20 pounds, look out. He is okay. So again, he's very tall and long. He does a great job of kind of weaponizing that length, keeping offensive linemen out of his body. He's a really good long arm move. As I watched him and watched him more and more and more through the season, he's got that bit of a, flips the switch. It's nasty, mean. The more he may get frustrated if he's not getting off blocks, kind of nastier and more determined. You can just see it, right? He gets jacked up when maybe things are kind of going his way. And then he comes up with the big plays, right? He's really good at defending the run, and he can get after the quarterback. I believe he's around 210, 215. So he's going to have to put on a bunch of size, right? Of course. But he's going to arrive at Notre Dame in just a couple of weeks. He'll have the whole offseason to do so. Let's say it takes a year and a half for him to get to that, size that he needs to be. We'll see how much time it takes, but I think he could be really good long-term. And the other one is Carson Hobbs. You can go to Irish Illustrated and check out the highlights I've sort of put together myself on him. But that kid, he's earned it. He wanted to become a better tackler and just on his own, not at the advice of anyone, went and approached the rugby team. Can I work with you guys? I'm trying to become a better tackler. He's taken up boxing recently. He's shredded from head to toe, just, ripped muscle, extremely skilled man cover cornerback. Ohio is loaded with really good cornerbacks, and he's one of the very best man cover corners there. Just sort of added toughness, a chip on his shoulder sort of thing. Made some outstanding interceptions this season. Erased Lakota West's top receiver, completely erased him in the playoffs. Really high on ours. And he's a wonderful young guy. He's a fantastic kid. Grew up on Notre Dame football. It's a really fun story. His dad's a lifelong, die-hard Notre Dame fan. He grew up watching the Irish with his dad. Not just kind of fond of Notre Dame. I'm a legit big-time Notre Dame fan. Now he's going to Notre Dame. So, it's a little extra special for him. It means a lot to him. Means the world to him. And he's got a lot of talent. So I really like, Logan Thomas, Carson Hobbs. They're getting some great talent out of Ohio.
Yeah, I look at Carson Hobbs and even Leonard Moore to a certain extent. Like, even if they're not rated that high in the recruiting sites, like, I just look at it as, Mike Mickens wants him. Well, then they must be good. I think Mike Mickens has earned that kind of credibility with the guys that he has recruited to play for Notre Dame and the way that they've developed. No better example than Benjamin Morrison. But you're right, a lot of Ohio talent there. Big proponent of Ohio high school football on this podcast. So that's certainly exciting for me to hear. Before Kevin and I predict who will be the top player to come out of this class, I wanted to take this opportunity to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. I used LinkedIn Jobs a couple years ago, and they made it easy to contact a hiring manager, learn more about the role, and eventually I got the job. We all know hiring people can be time-consuming, but adding the right team member can be invaluable to your business, and LinkedIn Jobs just makes it easier than ever. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They have a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, I love the running backs in this class, Keidron Young and Aeneas Williams. They're both highly rated guys, and they have a ton of talent, but they're very different backs. So how would you describe their styles of play and really what makes them go?
Yeah. Great question. Man, it was so much fun just watching those two all season. Just as a guy who enjoys football, right? And Aeneas Williams scored 152 touchdowns in high school. And I know we always hear all these big numbers, but if you really think about that,
that's an insane amount.
152 times he just sauntered into the end zone. I mean, that's a lot of scores, right? And anyways, he is like the definition of an all-purpose back. He truly is. He can go out. Man, I knew that he had pass catching ability, but there's a couple of times where I saw him actually split out wide and really good release off the snap and just burn the cornerback deep, create that separate and make these diving catches, on 45-yard catches, things of that nature. And made some outstanding catches over the middle where he's, going up one-handed, guy on his back. He's a really, really skilled receiver along with what he does at the running back position. He can pound the ball inside, high workload, feature back kind of thing. He's outstanding on perimeter rushes, all your gadget plays, your screens, pop passes, bubble screens, you name it. And then you can put him in the slot. You can put him out wide. He's took direct snaps for his team. He played safety for his team and intercepted the football. Punt returner. Man, he's a really special player, and so he's a lot of Kyren Williams like components. Kyren Williams is something special that you kind of, if you've seen it, what I'm referring to. Really, really scrappy at kind of clawing and scraping off tackles and making people miss. I don't know if Aeneas is quite there yet, but I think he's even more versatile than Kyren, and I think he has more speed than Kyren has ever had. So. But similar players, both from Missouri. And then Keidron Young is sort of, I would almost slot him sort of like somewhere in between Jadarian Price and Audric Estime, because he's that big back. He's 225. It's not quite as big as Estime is, but he's, 220, 225 pounds at around like 5'11". And he can just run right through you. His speed is legitimate. Like he's a feature back. Like I won't be surprised at all if he's Notre Dame's starting running back. For multiple seasons. He's got that star element. He's not quite just that big downhill bruiser. He's got more than that, right? He can make you miss. His jump cut is nasty. He can catch the football. So he's not just a one-trick pony. So you got this powerhouse back with some, lateral skills. And then you got this really, really versatile and exciting all-purpose running back. And man, talk about the perfect sort of complement, right? So really nice running backs class, no doubt.
One player we haven't talked about is Gerby Lambert. He's a high 4-star offensive tackle. He's actually the last guy to commit to Notre Dame, and that was way back in September. So it's been sort of a quiet few months here for this class. But Lambert, really highly touted, but he plays high school football in Massachusetts, not going up against the best competition, so it's probably going to take a little bit of time before he acclimates to the college level. But that being said, he's loaded with talent, and now Notre Dame is likely going to start their highest-rated tackle in last year's class in Charles Jagasaw in the Sun Bowl. So maybe he's the left tackle for the future. Do you see Gerby Lambert as the tackle opposite of Jagasaw down the road, maybe a little bit later in their careers?
Yeah, absolutely. I can see it. Lambert, if you follow recruiting, you know that when you see an offensive line recruit who's listed 6'6", 295, he's probably 6'5", 282, right? With Lambert, he's one of those guys that turned out to be even bigger than we thought. Apparently, he's 6'7", right around 300 pounds. He's a crazy, very, very big kid. Interesting story. He was a soccer player who hadn't even thought about playing football. The big kid who gets talked into, come out to the field when the coach sees him in the hallway, sort of thing. And man, and you can see it. There's so many times where I don't know if you can sort of picture this, or it'll make sense, but there were so many times I was watching their games, Catholic Memorial, where the quarterback would say, let's see, he hit the receiver 40 yards down the field on a post route, and he caught it, goes down, whistle blows. And then, how the teammates come running down to sort of congratulate or, celebrate with him. it was almost always Lambert, the first guy to that receiver or the running back who made the big play. There's a 300-pound guy outrunning everyone to get down there for an attaboy with his teammates. So anyways, my point is, and he can really run, this kid, Guerby Lambert. He can really run and move. So the point there is the tackle position. Absolutely. I cannot see him being the guy who we all think he's going to be a tackle, and then he's not quite laterally quick enough, and he's going to be a guard. No, I don't see that. He has everything you need. 6'7", 300. He's got the height and the length. He's just like physically, he's kind of like the perfect offensive line recruit, just from the physical standpoint. Isn't really much bad weight there, which is kind of crazy at that size. And the other thing I noticed about him is I've interviewed him in the past. He's a very sort of, I describe him as sort of a measured, quiet, really, really intelligent kid. So I was surprised to see on the field this year when he was just downright hostile to defensive linemen that he was playing against, like it was personal to him, played with almost a rage at times. And man, is that ever a nice thing to see for an offensive line, because it is such a violent fist fight in those trenches, right? And so again, that size, that movement, his passion for football, man, like there's no one who's more excited when one of his teammates can make a play than Guerby Lambert. He is their number one fan. He's sprinting down the field at 300 pounds to sort of celebrate with them. And then he is mean when he wants to be. I don't know sort of what sometimes sort of sets him off, but he is an unkind football player in the trenches to his opponents at times. So mean streak, size, movement, man, I love it. Really bright kid too. Will fit really well at Notre Dame.
Yeah, the way you talk about him, it kind of reminds me of Quentin Nelson, because he was known for pancaking a dude and then being the first down the field to pick up his teammate, whoever was carrying the ball. Although I wouldn't say that Big Q was quite as measured off the field. So they're a little bit different in that respect. Yeah. Right. Okay, this isn't a perfect class. There's obviously some question marks. So when you look at it, what are the biggest question marks that stand out to you?
Yeah, I feel like, again, quarterback, receiver, defensive end, really, really important there, right? I also felt safety was very, very important, because the whole slew of just misses or bad evaluations, transfers, classes with not enough safeties, dating back to, 2019 all the way through. So I really like a Don Schuler and Ben Minnick from the last class. I think they have good futures. But in this class, again, such a hole there. Like there's no sophomore safeties at Notre Dame right now. None. DJ Brown's on his way out. Antonio Carter re-entered the transfer portal. Ramon Henderson entered the transfer portal. Thomas Harper's out. We'll see what happens sort of here. Xavier Watts and all that, but there's only going to be a couple upperclassmen there, and then Adon Schuler and Ben Mitch. So yeah, that was a big need. They've added multiple safeties. Here's one thing I do believe: Tabron Benny Powell, and I could be wrong here. I think, though, there's a good chance he could end up playing nickel. Like I could see his blueprint being Thomas Harper's job, okay, which isn't exactly the safety position. That's the nickel position. So really, I feel like they kind of added two safeties there. And again, one of those safeties is Bronte Johnson, he's a fantastic athlete. Almost all the football I've seen him play, though, has either been a receiver or a dual threat quarterback. I haven't seen him play safety a lot. I do know from talking with some people from Fort Wayne that he's played plenty of defensive back in his life, but didn't play a whole lot of defensive back these last couple of years of high school, which matters. And anyways, I just think it's going to be, it's going to take time to get him conditioned to that position. If he can apply all that, talent that he has and come along well, he could be a really good player for them. And then Kennedy Urlacher, I really think that's another one of those sort of longer term guys, right? I don't really like the term project because I feel like it sounds like a smear, and that's not what I mean. But he's a guy who's going to take some time to come along, like most college players do. I could see Kennedy Urlacher being, getting his start out on special teams and making his plays and finding his way to the field eventually from there. But anyhow, they addressed the safety position. I just feel like they could have used a big impact guy or a guy who could come in and play early. We'll see how it goes, though. This is an interesting class where Marcus Freeman is kind of like, I feel like there's a kind of a different brand of 3-star recruit. Some of these guys like Teddy Rizak and Kennedy Urlacher and Sean Sevillano. It's going to be interesting to see if there's some big time evaluation wins there where these guys end up, really outperforming. We'll see how that goes. The other spot where, I feel like it came up a little bit short is defensive tackle. I really like Sevillano. I think that's a really nice nose tackle for them. But I've been saying for a long time, they really need that big, 6'4", 6'5", big defensive tackle with skill. I can probably come in and play early-ish, right? Riley Mills won't be around much longer. Howard Cross, same story there. I really like they have in Rubio and Anye, right? We'll see kind of what happens with guys like Tyson Ford and Devin Houston and so on. I think that coming up a bit short at defensive tackle this year will not hurt them next fall because of what they have returning. The whole two deep there with Mills and Cross and Rubio and Anye and so on. But in a couple of years, it's hard to kind of draw up a 2026 depth chart, right? So, we'll see if they can shore that up through the 2025 recruiting class and the transfer portal and whatnot over the next year or two. But yeah, I feel like safety, defensive tackle, those are a couple areas where they maybe, could have used a little bit more. But and when you're landing Cam Williams and Kingston Viliamuasa and Bryce Young and Gerby Lambert and Kedron Young and CJ Carr and all of these guys, it can be. I know there's some pessimistic people, but I find it kind of hard to kind of dwell on that too much with what they have coming in.
All right, last question here. Let's end it on a high note. There's a lot of talented guys in this class, but you've got to pick one. Who do you think will have the best career at Notre Dame?
I was sort of working on that question for some signing day content we'll have coming out on Wednesday. It was really difficult because I had sort of two. It was really tough tug and pull. And I'll say this, for me, if I just have to guess, then that's a really tough question.
You could cheat a little bit. You could say two.
Yeah. But I went with Bryce Young, and here's why. I think Kingston Viliamuasa is the best and most prepared football player, most talented player right now and coming into the program. I think Bryce Young is just a little bit behind him, but his long-term potential is we don't know what it is. The leaps he's taken from year to year has been substantial. Again, just a couple of years ago, he was a kid who just started playing football, and he was a clumsy receiver that no one knew and had no offers. Now he's an All-American defensive end. He's 6'6" and 240 and dominant. He's Bryant Young's son, and he is everything you would assume that would mean, but he's 6'6", right? And he's been coached by his dad. Bryant Young's the defensive line coach and became a defensive coordinator later in the season at his program this year. So imagine what it means to be Bryant Young's son, but also coached by him legitimately all through high school. And so I just think his long-term potential could be more than anyone's in this class. So that's my pick. I could be wrong. And if I am wrong, it'll be Kingston or CJ Carr, but we'll see.
All right, you can find all of Kevin's work on irishillustrated.com. I know the team over there is going to be pumping out more signing day content all week long, so be sure to check it out. Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to come on, man, especially during such a busy week. I really appreciate it, and we'll have to do it again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Always good talking with you, Tyler.
All right, that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. I will be back tomorrow with Luke Smith to do our end-of-season awards show. It's one of my favorite segments every single year, so I can't wait, and you're not going to want to miss it. Before you head out, please subscribe on YouTube or Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Spotify and on social media. The X account is at Locked On Irish. Instagram is at Locked On Irish Pod, and my personal X account is at Tyler, WOJCIAK. I'll see you guys tomorrow.